So, speaking of one of those teams, after failing to reach an agreement on a long-term deal, Kirk Cousins will play this season under the franchise tag worth almost $20 million. During an interview with 106.7 The Fan on Wednesday, Cousins talked about playing under that tag. Here's what he said. If I wasn't wanted here, the team would not have franchise tagged me. It's been well documented that it's a good amount of money. So the franchise tag showed that I am wanted now, maybe not beyond this year, but for this year I'm wanted. And frankly, that's all you really have in this league. You don't have much more than the next game. This coming season, you've got to prove it. Stephen A., wise move by him to bet on himself, play under that franchise tag?
I don't think it is. I applaud his courage, his bravery, his belief in himself, and I don't think he deserves to be knocked or criticized for it. But I think it's very risky, and I think that, you know, he's believing his whole headlines a little bit too much. I mean, I was one of those people that I got disgusted listening to him say, "You like that?" I loved it when the Green Bay Packers shut him the hell up in the playoffs, because the Washington Redskins hadn't beaten a team over 500 all season. Every one of his victories were against sub-500 teams. Yes, you played what you played. He completed nearly 70% of his passes, incredibly impressive. Threw for over 4,000 yards, had 29 touchdowns, just 11 interceptions, and a QBR of 70. That was a spectacular season. Yeah. That was a spectacular season. But it was also an aberration because of the schedule. Now it should be tougher this year. Folks will see you coming, and we'll see what you have. I think if you had an opportunity to get a longer-term deal that would have cost you just maybe a few million, you know, over the life of it, I think that's something he should have taken rather than a one-year, $19 million deal. But I applaud him for betting on himself, because I can respect that.
Well, Stephen A., you will be shocked to learn that I disagree.
Yes.
Look, what's the real risk here? First of all, I was talking about Elway, talking about middle-class quarterbacks, right? And I always had the impression of Kirk Cousins, like, that's him at best.
Yeah.
In fact, when RG3 is there, I'm like, why do people think Kirk Cousins can play? Maybe it's the old stereotype of a quarterback, and somehow he looks like he's from Central Casting, right?
Yeah.
And maybe now that the league has changed some, people don't buy into that anymore, but I was like, is this even a question? You're wondering if Kirk Cousins is better than RG3? Are you insane? Now it looks like maybe they made the right decision. He played extremely well, I have to admit it. Now, what is he really risking here? He's getting about $20 million this season. The biggest guarantee is Andrew Luck for $87 million.
Yep,
they weren't going to give him that. Maybe they guarantee him 40 or something like that. $20 million this season, even if he just gets franchised, like he gets another $20 million, that's basically what he was going to get guaranteed anyway. He is taking a risk. It's a calculated gamble, but all he needs is one more, doesn't have to be even as good as last year, just another good season, and he's likely to make more money than he would otherwise, significantly more, as the quarterback market continues to increase.
Unless he gets hurt.
Yeah,
there's always a possibility.
We just did a segment with you talking about the health of football players.
You're right about that.
The quarterback position. We're talking about Kirk Cousins here, and I think that's something that you have to take into consideration.
But it's not like he's getting $6 million. He's getting just about 20. So, like, you know, he's set for life after this season.
He was only sacked 26 times last year compared to the 38 I mentioned about Brady. They protected him relatively decently. We'll see what happens. You got Garcon, you got Deshaun Jackson and healthy. I am a fan of Jordan Reed, their tight end. I think he's a stud. Okay?
No question.
They have to protect him. They lost Alfred Morris, their running back. Let's see what their running game is going to be like. But more importantly, you're not a surprise or an enigma. They see you coming now.
Of course.
Especially since you've been in everybody's face. You like that? You like that? And Green Bay said,
Stephen was very annoyed by that last year.
So let's see what happens this year.
And if Romo stays healthy, he's at best the third best quarterback in the division, right? I mean, at best. Cousins is at best the third best quarterback.
Let's see.
Well, the New York Times reported on Wednesday that an NFL-backed youth football program called Heads Up does not reduce injuries the way organizers have claimed. So the Heads Up football program offers in-person and online classes teaching proper tackling techniques and safety procedures for game and practice. And a sharp decline in youth football participation due to parent safety concerns have caused the organization to explore ways to make the sport, of course, safer. Max, is this bad for the NFL?
Of course. Of course it's bad for the NFL. And look, I love watching the NFL. I mean,
we all do.
When I'm not even talking about college, I mean NFL football, right? Like Sunday, Americans love it. We love it. It's our church on Sundays, right? That's where we worship at the altar of this league. But make no mistake about it, playing football is bad for you. And you can, I talked about boxing the other day like this. You can make all kinds of arguments. It takes kids off the street. It instills discipline. It builds character, et cetera, et cetera. All those things may be true. But playing football is like smoking cigarettes in the sense that it is bad for your health. And when we talk about the kind of injuries, you know, everyone always knew if you inhaled smoke into your lungs, that's a bad thing.
Of course.
But then everyone feigned shock when they found out how bad. Come on. Playing football, taking those shots at the NFL level especially, we're talking about degree, not kind. In other words, exactly how bad for you remains to be seen and how much you can mitigate it, the damage. Okay, fine. Just because they did this study and they found it didn't work doesn't mean you don't keep trying. You keep trying and you may be able to make marginal advances in player safety. But in terms of kind, we know it's extremely bad. It shortens lives. NFL players die early. And the long-term prospects for the NFL in this country, believe it or not, is it will become increasingly marginalized as a result of this issue. So I'm sure if you're in the NFL and you're thinking, we got to get out ahead of this issue, we have to make this sport as safe as possible, you're hoping you're going to get some good news here, for example. And what you're finding is tackle football is just bad for you, and there's never going to be a way to make it good for you. And so the long-term fortunes of your sport, even when you try to get ahead of the injury issue, I don't know how you stop it from, over time, becoming marginalized.
As inclined as I am to use this time to rebut that argument, I think it's only fair to you to ask you to explain yourself just a touch further when I present this question. How can you, Max Kellerman, of all people, make such an argument when you are renowned and famous for covering the sport of boxing?
Yep.
I mean, where literally, you know, I mean, football players might have helmet-to-helmet hits, lowering their heads, or when they get tackled, their head may hit the turf. That's some of the players. But in boxing, you are literally stepping into the ring and getting knocked upside your head every 3 seconds practically for how many rounds you last.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, first, the difference between boxing and football. I have 3 daughters. If I had sons, they'd probably, you know, my oldest probably already be in the gym working out boxing, right? You can at least, it's someone your own size, you have headgear, you can see where the shots are coming from. Football, you don't know where the shots are coming from. There are random, from the player's perspective, acts of violence that take place that you really have no defense for, that can even be life-threatening. Certainly, when you look at the life expectancy of NFL players, there are decades taken off of their lives on average. Just look at the players and look how long they live. They're living, what, 20 years, 18 years? Shorter. What I'm saying is this about boxing. You asked me, I'm hypocritical. Okay. I recognize.
I appreciate you saying that, because that's where I was going. But go ahead.
Right, sure. In this sense, I recognize that boxing is exploitation, that I am involved in the supply side, not the demand, also on the demand side, but certainly on the supply side of an exploitative sport. I don't make an apology for it. I don't try to rationalize it away. It's simply something I love to watch. I believe there will always be people who love to watch it, but I also have to recognize boxing was one of the 2 or 3 biggest sports in this country, you know, decades and decades ago. And over time, even though at moments Muhammad Ali pops up, or Mike Tyson pops up, basically the trend is like this. Basically the trend is that boxing, because of its violent and exploitative nature, has been pushed toward the margins of American life. And I believe over time the same thing's going to happen to football.
All right,
I will still watch it.
We only got a couple of minutes, so let me chime in here. I get your argument. You're talking about boxing being pushed to the margins, whereas the NFL is king, so more people are going to be inclined to be actively involved, therefore more lives are going to be endangered, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm saying to you, just thinking about it, let's all understand that it's relative here, Max. When we sit up there and we talk about the dangers that exist in the sport of professional football, well, there's no argument against that if we're just talking about the sport. But when you take life into consideration, somebody who has nothing, who's in the streets, who's striving to make themselves and climb themselves out of poverty and deprivation and being from impoverished backgrounds, who's sitting up there wondering what their life is going to be like if they don't have this outlet to exploit for their monetary and financial gain. All of those things are going to be taken into consideration. So when we think about the risks that are being taken and we wonder about the endangerment to the sport of football, which is ultimately your argument that there's going to be a dissipated level of interest because people are going to be more concerned, I would emphatically disagree with that argument for one reason and one reason only. Demographics. When you look at it from a demographical standpoint and you take into account the fact that you are young, whether you're black, Latino, or whatever, even white, because there's a whole bunch of poor white people in America as well. Rich ones too. But I'm just saying, let's not all think that everybody that's black that's playing in the NFL comes from an impoverished background. There's some middle-class brothers playing in the NFL. There's some poor white guys playing in the NFL, just like there's poor black guys. I'm simply saying that they recognize the risk. We must then ask ourselves, why are you so hell-bent on taking it? Because to them, it's risk reward, and it almost gets to the point where it ain't that much of a risk anyway, because the alternative, which is the life that I would have without football, doesn't compare to the life that I could potentially have with football, even if I end up getting hurt, because it's not even about whether I get hurt. It's about when. If I get hurt after I sign that contract, if I get hurt after I cash that money, if I get hurt after I guarantee myself a quality of life that I otherwise would not have been able to pull off, because even a 9-to-5 job, assuming I get my education and I go out there and I work, ain't going to reward me with what potentially I can do if I can pull off a 3 to 5 year career on this level, on an elite level, of course, then that says to me it's something the NFL recognizes, and as a result, they are not concerned, and we shouldn't be concerned about the sport fading. What we should be concerned about is what's going to happen to those who get involved, as opposed to whether or not they're going to choose to be involved, because they ain't going nowhere.
There are always going to be ancillary benefits. There will always be a market for football. My contention is that market will shrink over time as a result of the safety issue. But to your point, it is therefore incumbent upon us who peddle this stuff, who consume this stuff, to make every effort to make it as safe as possible.
That's
recognizing
true. We agree there.
Right. Recognizing it'll never be safe, but at least, so just the fact that this study found that the precautions didn't work doesn't mean you don't keep trying.
That's
and you
true.
don't, and you don't
That's
start
true,
the next program.
Last point. All of that stuff being said, as long as we put over the airwaves billions, whether it's 18 billion a year, 180 billion over 10 years, and it's mandated that there's a portion of that the league has to share with the players.
There's going to be players.
There are going to be players.
Without question.
And that's just the way it's going to be.
Without question.
That's just the way it's going to be. And when you got pastors in church that's literally scheduling their sermons around the NFL schedule. And I know several who have done it. Not my pastor, A.R. Bernard at Christian Cultural Center in Brooklyn. Not him. But I've known of pastors throughout this nation that have altered their schedules to some degree just for NFL Sunday. Trust me,
I'll tell you
the NFL ain't going nowhere.
I'll tell you something
ain't going nowhere.
You put it on TV, I'm always going to watch.
No doubt.
You two are always going to watch.
No
you guys are going to watch. I mean,
I'd
there's
rather
always a
watch
market
it than
for
go to the game.
Speaking of which,
Football,
let's talk some more NFL.